Japheth, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Generation Latino podcast. I came across your content, I would say about maybe a month ago. I think it was your first page that I saw, which was a girl and a gay. And then that got me into your single page on TikTok. If you can explain to my audience what started your first channel and then what you do on your second one. And once again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It truly means a lot to me. But go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love your content. I love the purpose of this podcast, being Mexican, being gay. I'm like, we're brothers in this. So I'm loving it. Really appreciate being here. And yeah, I started my page a few months ago. I started an initial page with my best friend, Jacqueline. She and I both live here in Nashville. She's a straight woman. She's got actually a really established TikTok presence, Instagram presence, and was in social media, kind of active in it. And one day we were just like, talking about dating and all these things, and she talks about dating on her page. So she was like, "Hey, would you want to like come on my TikTok? Like we can make a video together." So we did, and it was about the differences between straight dating and gay dating, and it performed really well. So she thought, "Hey, like what if we make a page together? Would you be interested?" And so I said yes, and the premise of it is dating as a girl and as a gay, and it's all founded on the friendship dynamic between women and gay men, which is something really special. And as we started that page, I thought, I ought to, start my own page and grow my own presence on TikTok and, slowly try different formats, different topics. And I landed on dating too. And so now my page is kind of dating advice, friendship advice, life advice from a gay man in his mid 30s. So, just kind of speaking from experience, different situations I've encountered with people of any kind, and just kind of sharing what works and having fun with this. And look where it's gotten me. And now I'm meeting you.
I think that's the beauty. That's the positive part of social media. I know there's a lot of negative things that people talk about, but you get to meet so many people. Again, I came across your content and I was like, this guy's pretty interesting. So, is there a difference between gay dating and straight dating?
There is many, but there are a few big ones. I think number one, there are a lot of similarities actually, just in dealing with men and everything else that comes with that. But I will say some of the big differences are also like timeline, for example, like straight people start dating very early in life, gay people sometimes not until much later in life. I think that's a big difference. I think how we meet people is a big difference in terms of when you go out in most major cities, the majority of people are not gay. So you're kind of up against a different kind of smaller population, especially if you live in a smaller city or smaller town. That creates a much different dynamic for gay people. And I think, too, on top of that, our culture is very different. It's very hookup based. Our kind of standards for sexuality and how we behave sexually and kind of portray our sex lives is much different from straight people, not in every way, but in a very general way. So I think like from what I've noticed, like those are three kind of big differences between straight dating and gay dating. Although I think the list could probably go on.
As a queer man myself, I've realized that it doesn't matter what age you're at, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Hookup culture is so prevalent in our culture. Why do you think that is?
Oh, that's the golden question, right? I mean, if I had to kind of, put my spin on that, I would say it's probably just related to liberation. A lot of us spend a portion of our lives, if not the majority in some cases for older generations, not being able to be who we are. Compound that with, you know, just the promiscuity of men.
Yeah.
But I think hookup culture is also just, I think it probably stems from a place of freedom, but can become a little challenging when you're looking for quality relationships or feeling like that's not really you, but it's a widespread culture that you want to be a part of. So, like, do you have to like, change yourself to fit into that? Not really sure, the origin or like kind of why on a large scale it is. But if I had to guess, I would say it's probably just like that like freedom, but taken to a new level. And it's with something like sex, which is typically and historically viewed as something very private or very intimate between two
Yeah.
people. But with gay people, we make our own rules. Like we don't live by a playbook, we don't live by traditions. There's none of that for us. So I think having that sort of blank slate and again, liberation, kind of freedom to be who we are and live how we want, we're pursuing sex, which is something everyone does, but it's in a different way or on a different scale. So yeah,
I think from my experience too, I think that there's gay men who are suppressed. Most gay men have been suppressed. I've
right.
been out since I was 13, 14. So I didn't have to suppress much growing up. I was able to get the Spice Girls CD if I wanted to, or the Britney, or the boy bands, or whatever I wanted as a child, I was able to get. I
Yeah.
think that there's some psychology behind the fact that someone is suppressed at a young age. And then as they get older, they're still kind of suppressed, like their teenage years, and they become an adult. And then they're able to be who they want to be. And all that suppression just explodes in everything, whether it's abundance of alcohol or drugs or sex. Like that's how I see it a little bit. I know that's a little dark, but as I've gotten older, like you, I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, there has to be a deeper psychology than just wanting to have sex. It has to be.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I agree with you. Like a lot of it comes from that suppression. I mean, and I think that impacts how we date, especially from the timeline standpoint, like being able to date much later in life. A lot of gay people feel like, oh, well, I didn't come out until maybe I was 28. So now if I'm in my 30s or whatever, like I'm starting fresh, where most people might start dating when they're in middle school, high school, like I'm doing that much later in life. And like, not only that, but the suppression part, having to hide who you are because being who you are had consequences. It meant that people telling you that you shouldn't be that way or felt dangerous or unsafe, that impacts your ability to accept love and to be yourself because you're taught kind of, or conditioned is a better word, to think that who you are is not lovable or bad. And then on top of that, you add like the timeline of dating, feeling behind, feeling confused, going through all these motions. It's bound to kind of turn into different things that aren't so pretty, but it's very understandable, like the impact it has once you kind of take a step back and realize, like, oh, this is a result of kind of someone's identity struggle and overcoming a really universal experience for gay people. We all have a coming out story, and some of them are a little bit easier or come out, people can come out earlier in life. Maybe not easier is the right word, but you know what I mean? Where it's like some people have an ability to come out earlier, some people come out later, and it's just all these different dynamics at play. But it does have some mental impact, no doubt.
Yeah, I've had to be, as I've gotten older, a little bit more mindful of, hey, Paul, your path was different. You had a boyfriend at 14 years old and your parents accepted that. This person did not have that. Because I'm like, why can't they just be who they want to be? And I've had to be very mindful of like, hey, that's not everyone's journey and that's not everyone's path. I thought that was normal. I didn't know that that was not 90% of other kids my age.
Similar to you, I came out when I was 16. I had my first boyfriend at 16. It was kind of this twofold dynamic because there was this freedom to be myself and, all of that with my mother. But my extended family elsewhere was not as accepting. And so I had to hide still. So I was like half out to them, half not kind of in a way. And so it like was this weird dynamic and like and that's also the other thing about it kind of it ties back to being gay. It's like everyone's journey and experience is so different. We all hit different milestones. Like there are some universal milestones like coming out, like having your first boyfriend or whatever it is, but the circumstances are just so vastly different from person to person that it's hard for some people, but, once you figure it out and realize like, hey, like some situations are kind of like not okay for that, and it takes a lot of bravery and struggle to get there, you understand people better.
That's very true. Do you think it's harder to date now than it was a few years ago?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's harder as much as it is like there's more opportunity for disappointment. I think there's a lot of available routes for dating, especially for gays, like with different apps. Like we don't have just hookup apps now. We have apps that are meant for dating. We still have our regular avenues of bars or gay spaces, pride parades, whatever it is, like different places to meet people. But I think having more options to not only meet people, but just like the sheer volume of people that you can encounter makes it difficult because you're up against new dynamics. Like, and again, can be very disappointing. Like, you have more opportunities to be like, oh, like if I'm still doing all this work and pursuing all these routes and I'm coming up short. Like, well, that's like such a letdown. But in some ways, it could be perceived as harder because now you're dealing with people who are more available. So there's always options. And that can create a grass is greener mindset where you're like, oh, like people don't want to commit because they're worried there might be a better match. And so it does create some difficult dynamics. But I feel like relative to a few years ago, the main challenge is just the growing availability. But I think the like gay cultural dynamics of like finding a match for yourself that's like someone who really aligns with like all the different points where you can match up with someone for a relationship are still standing. But yeah, for me, I guess the volume is a big difference that makes it harder. But I think also there's just more opportunity for disappointment. And that's part of I guess, the difficulty, you could say.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. I was literally having this conversation today with someone at the gym, and we are talking about dating, and they're like, "There's just so many options now. There is a plethora of options from hookup apps to dating apps to everything, everything." And now it's something doesn't work out, you just go to the next one, go to the next one.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of times we're looking for the one. We're looking for that right person. But sometimes dating is about filtering out the people you don't match with faster because there are so many to go through where it's like you're not gonna match with everyone. You're mostly going to not match up with some with people, you know? But I think just wanted to kind of add that thought too, where it's like, sometimes you do have to kind of shift your focus to like, okay, I know this person is not a match. Maybe this person isn't. Just going through that process faster can sometimes be a more productive way to look at dating, not in a transactional way, just in a like, I know what I want. I want to go find it. And let me figure out if this person is a match to that because time is of the essence. We only get so much life to live. And
Yeah.
so, you want to treat it wisely and, use it judiciously. But yeah, that's kind of another take that I've learned is like sometimes you just got to filter out.
I always tell my friends, I know what I want, but more importantly, I know what I don't want. I always tell people, you don't have to know what you want, but know what you don't want in your life.
Absolutely. Things like deal breakers, boundaries, things you won't tolerate, won't accept. And you learn a lot about what you do want as the inverse of those things. Cause sometimes you can be open. You'd be like, you'll date someone and think, oh, that maybe not be originally what I thought I wanted, but this is worth a try. And then you end up, things happen, you learn, you apply it to the next one. Like it's kind of good to look at it from both angles. And I think you're exactly right. Cause sometimes, like, when you sit down and think about it, you're like, what do
Yeah.
I want?
I don't want someone who is going to be dishonest with me. I don't want a guy that's going to treat me badly. So I tell people focus on the things that you do not want versus what you want, and that will
Yeah.
get you a little further.
Like if you are trying to answer that question of what do I want, like sometimes thinking about what you don't want really does reveal it.
Yeah, I agree. Part of being in the queer culture is emotions are high. You're dealing with people who haven't dealt with trauma or haven't dealt with maybe broken relationships. What is something queer men struggle with emotionally that nobody really talks about?
I do think it hits on what we talked about earlier a bit, which is the ramifications of coming out and having to hide yourself that really can delay your ability to date, but also to be loved. It's really difficult to accept yourself and to accept love from other people when you are so used to being told it's wrong or hearing that it's wrong, even though it's not wrong. I think that's something people don't talk about. I think also what I've learned just from like some research and conversations I have is I don't know if this answers your question directly, but like I think, the questions like what do people go through, gay people go through emotionally that most people don't talk about. And I think it's like loneliness. I think a lot of times like loneliness can lead to different behaviors like staying in situationships. It can lead to sacrificing your boundaries or deal breakers for someone because you don't want to be alone. It can lead to substance abuse. It can lead to pursuing promiscuity. It can lead to all sorts of things, not to mention just the depression, everything else that happens individually, to you as a person. But I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about, especially because it will influence how you date, your ability to be happy and to live your life and feel independent and live from a place of abundance and excitement and opportunity. Like that's hard to do if you feel lonely. It's hard to do if you feel depressed from being lonely and whatever else that leads to. Yeah, I would say that's probably it. And tied into that, I think too, is emotionally like because we feel so lonely, I think a lot of us actually want monogamous relationships. I think that partnership and that companionship are really valuable to most gay men. I don't think most gay men say it or talk about it for a variety of reasons. We're worried about being perceived as old fashioned or, not open minded. Surveys I've read, research I've read, like most gay men actually do want monogamous relationships, but they're worried to say it because they don't want to miss out on someone who they could be with. Maybe because they're lonely, maybe for other reasons, but it's like this complex environment of issues that are sometimes related, sometimes aren't.
You talk about in research that gay men do want monogamous relationships. I think the problem is that they equate a monogamous relationship with tradition, and tradition means going back to man and woman. It goes back to being closed-minded. So I think there's again the psychology of, well, if I'm traditional, that means I'm not a progressive gay man. And I always tell people I am a progressive individual, but I still want monogamy and I still want a traditional relationship. Now, my thoughts can be different. Like I believe in gay rights and progression when it comes to politics, but just because I want to date traditionally doesn't mean that I'm not a progressive gay man.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think it's very much one area
Mhm.
of your life, and it's that you choose to be with one person. And it's just as acceptable as someone who wants an open relationship. That's valid. That's totally fine. Like there's no right or wrong. It's just about what you want for yourself. And I think because of that stigma that you can experience from saying you want monogamy, most men will hide it, even though we mostly want it. And if you don't, again, it's okay. Like where I take issue with that debate is telling people that something is right or wrong or realistic or unrealistic. It's like monogamy might not be realistic for some people, just as open relationships might not be realistic for some people. You really have to live and let live. That has to be your mindset to be accepting of each other because what's not progressive is not accepting each other. I have kind of a stance on this that I really feel passionate about because I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting that. I think I see where people come from when they're saying, "Oh, like that's heteronormative or that's whatever." And it's like, "No, it's not. It's a gay relationship." And it's up to us to make the rules, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing what you want. Like just like in any way that looks like. So, my take on it.
No, I love that. And I think people misunderstand me when I talk about me not wanting to be in an open relationship. I'm not judging anyone. That's just not for me. For me, that doesn't equate to, this is going to be very controversial. It doesn't equate to loyalty for me as a partner. Like, I believe loyalty is between two people, and that's how that works for me. But people are like, "Oh, you gotta not be so closed-minded." I said, "I'm okay with people wanting to be in open relationships, but what I don't want is a guy wanting to date me and then date other people."
I think you raise a great point, and it's that you know, it's It's what you want for
Correct.
you. Monogamy doesn't automatically mean open relationships are bad or you're saying other people should do it. I think that's where a lot of people get confused. Don't get it twisted. Just as you define loyalty as having one other person, someone else like might define it differently. And it's just like, who's to say? Like, as long as you're happy and your needs are met, that's what defines a successful relationship. Is like, here's what I need. I know I need XYZ out of a relationship to feel good, to feel happy, and to be a good partner to someone else. And if that other person fills those needs, fabulous. If four other people fill those needs, or even one other person, it's like fab. Like that's the
Yeah.
goal. A lot of people misunderstand the debate. It's not about being open minded. It's about having your needs met and what's working for you. I take issue with the gay community for judging each other because at the end of the day, like it's up to us. We get to live our own life. Like, what's it to you what someone else wants to do? Like, it's not your relationship; it's theirs. Like, So that's my kind of like I don't know. I have some conviction when I say that because I feel like it just misses the point to tell someone else like what they should or shouldn't do. And I don't think that being monogamous is closed minded at all. I think a lot of us push ourselves to be open to open relationships because they're so prevalent and because they're so present and people, have a stigma against monogamy. But I wish there was more empathy and compassion between the gay community around that debate.
You think that hookup culture has damaged real connections?
I think it has and can. Does it always? No, but I think it influences it, no doubt. I mean, when you're trying to find a partner who you feel safe with and meets your needs and all these things. And there's like trust involved and sex and hooking up kind of can interplay with that. I think it can be damaging in that it can impact trust. Like, is someone going to go behind my back, uh, or is my boyfriend looking at someone else? Like if you're insecure or feeling jealous, like I say that because that's what I struggle with. Just being upfront. Like I think it can have that impact, but I wouldn't say it's like impossible to overcome because I know a lot of gay couples who are very happy, very sound in their relationship, and hookup culture doesn't really impact them. It is a difficult foundation to build on though when you're dating. I think, if you go to a gay bar, for example, it feels very like hookup culture, like scene, like people are there to find someone to go home with. Like nothing wrong with that, but it adds this like almost like I don't know what the right word is, like a tone or a layer or like kind of like a
Yeah.
filter on dating for gay people that because it's always this like underlying performance based culture, like on apps, at bars, like all these things where it just feels ever present. And so it can be hard to find spaces where you can meet men where it's not performance based, where it's not about how hot are you, how rich are you, how cool are you, how noticeable or visible are you? It's just about having genuine connection. So from that perspective, I think it can be hard. Like even you think about like Grinder, for example, hookup app. But people want to use it for dating. But if you're trying to use it for dating in a space where hookup is more prevalent, makes it challenging. So I think in that way it can impact real connection, but it just depends on how you look at it. Like I feel like someone in an open relationship probably would not really think about it as damaging because they connect with someone and hooking up might be just part of their relationship norm. Whereas maybe for monogamous people, it might make it a little more challenging or feel just a little bit more unsafe. But it kind of depends on, I think, your reaction to it or how where you find yourself within it all.
I agree with you. Do you think that it is harder finding love or maintaining it?
I would say maintaining. This is one of my stances on dating is that it's very easy to attract. It is very much harder to keep. Like it's those initial phases of dating, of meeting someone, like when you find someone and you click with them, it's very natural. Like that's the easy part. People always say like, "Oh, it's just so easy. It's just whatever." And like, it should be. It should be. It's exciting. That's the front end. But then when you move to the next level of a relationship, that's where it becomes hard because that's where it's focused on your needs and your personality and whether you're a true match for each other. And so I think from that perspective, like it's harder to maintain. Even if you equate it to a saying like, "Oh, it's easy to get to the top, but it's harder to stay there." It's like same with a relationship. Like it can be easy to get into a relationship, harder to keep it around just because you have to deal with the realities of another person and what they bring to the table and what you bring to the table. It's a lot to process and it's not easy. I would say it's mostly on the maintenance side.
Do you think that people give up too easily when they're in relationships?
Hey, my personal opinion is no. In some ways, like maybe people get too comfortable too easily, but I think that's a small percentage. I think most people stay way too long. I think most people struggle with not knowing when to leave or when their boundaries or deal breakers have been crossed. They might know it, but not be brave enough to act. From my perspective, I think most people are wondering when enough is enough to leave. And they know how to maybe have a boundary in mind, but not how to stick to it. It's really hard. Like, it's not easy. It's very uncomfortable, and breakups can come with a lot of weight and baggage, especially if you live together. I don't think people have trouble staying. I think they mostly have trouble knowing when to leave, unless they're an avoidant person.
I think your peace of mind is so much more important than keeping anyone in your life that's causing just heaviness, you know? But speaking of, whether it's harder to fall in love or maintain, what is the difference between attention and genuine interest?
Yes. Well, number one, I agree with your peace statement. I think a lot of us forget that like we are like the most important people in our own lives. You're the most important person in your life. I'm the most important person in my life. That applies for everyone. And understanding that how you spend your time is a permanent investment. You don't get time back ever. But going into your question, attention versus like interest, I think this is a big one because like even you and I were chatting right before. It's like, you can say hi, hello to someone, and that's attention. That doesn't mean you want to date them. even when you get into dating where it's like maybe there has been some interest expressed, like attention can look like things like texting you every now and then, but never making plans, giving you a compliment, but not something really surface level. Whereas like interest or intention is like checking in intentionally every day or seeing how you're doing just because, not because they want anything out of you. Like it's just purely to get to know you. Or even when you're having a conversation, they remember things about you. They intentionally kind of commit things to memory and want to get to know you and what's valuable to you. So I think when it comes to attention, it's very kind of surface level. It can look like time spent together or how long you've known each other, but that doesn't mean depth. Depth is where you get the interest part, where people are taking action on the words they say. So they might text you about meeting up and then they make a plan, or they like have a conversation with you, but they remember the thing you said and they check up or follow up on it the following week because you said you had something important going on. Like those to me are better signs of intention and interest, which again is not a surface level. You can be getting both at the same time, no doubt, but they are different. And the opposite is true when that doesn't happen.
A lot of my girlfriends are in situationships. And for anyone who doesn't know what a situationship is, I'm saying this because I have some friends who are older and like, in their 60s and they're like, what's a situationship? It's not a relationship. Let's make it clear. A situationship for me, at least, is something that is not concrete, it's unpredictable, it's unstable, it's a plethora of emotions. That's what I consider a situationship, right? There's nothing stable with it. Why do you think so many people stay in situationships? Or maybe you have a different definition for it and you can explain what you think a situationship is.
I would define them similarly. For me, like it really actually comes down to the word defined. Like to me, situationships are undefined relationships. There's no stated commitment. There are no boundaries. There is no direction. Probably, it's just kind of a static connection. And it might, yeah, and it might serve its purpose. Like, some people are fine with something casual because dating does not always have to be about pursuing a relationship. You can date for any number of reasons, and it's totally fine. Just, when it comes to situationships too, I think a lot of people stay because that ambiguity is kind of maybe familiar. It might be something that subconsciously they're just used to. It could also be that they are hoping things will change, like secretly hoping this dude or this person is going to come around and choose them. And then I think a third one, and this is again just kind of high level, is like not knowing what your boundaries are. Like you kind of have to give yourself a time limit on a connection to see when it'll go, and it's kind of up to you to confirm whether someone wants the things that you want or not. Like if you want a relationship, you have to say that. And if you haven't and you're in a situationship, imagine what might happen if you have that conversation. So sometimes more complicated than that. It's not always such a cut and dry example as such as that. But like, I think if people know what they want, what they don't want, and can stick
Yeah.
to it, and what they want or don't want is a situationship,
Yeah.
like they'll act accordingly. So I think it comes down to again the ambiguity of it feeling familiar. It could be that they just don't know what they want or how to get out of it or whatever it is. Those are, I don't know, those things come to mind for me in situations.
No, I agree. And I think one thing that gets people in trouble with situationships is when feelings get involved. And when I say feelings, I'm talking like you're starting to fall for the person. I've seen it happen. And that's when you kind of have to pull back and be like, whoa, like this was just supposed to be a summer fling. And now I'm wanting to spend the fall and winter with you.
The thing is expectations. Like when feelings get involved, you really have to step up for yourself. Otherwise, it'll continue. And even when you didn't mean to, like some people kind of end up in them, and it's
True.
like, I didn't mean to end up in it, but like kind of like you described, it's like, could be a summer fling, but you're like, wait, well, I like this person. Like, what? Oh
Have you ever ignored a red flag?
my God. I don't know how many times I ignored someone who, number one, did not do what they said they would do. That was a big one for me that I've ignored in a past relationship. And number two, a red flag I ignored was them not really being sure about what their future would look like. Because for me, I'm a very future forward person as far as understanding what my goals are, where I want things to go, and I know what I want out of a relationship. But I've heard men say that they were not very clear on that, and I kind of just like
Yeah.
let it slide, and then eventually realize like, okay, he's not as invested as I am, and like I'm not happy. So I would say those are two things, but I will say a big third red flag that I've ignored is bad communication. Like when you are in a relationship and you have serious conversations, like not only do you have to be upfront and honest, but you really have to try to understand each other. That's what is going to make for a productive conversation is your ability to ask questions and listen to someone so that you understand where they're coming from. Not agree or
Yeah.
disagree, just understand. And they need to be able to do the same. Big factor of that is like the message that I'm trying to send to you might not be the same message that you received. Like you really have to work at that two-way exchange. And especially when it comes to taking accountability, like if people are not able to take accountability for their actions, if they blame you. For me, a big one is name calling. I will never accept name calling in a relationship of any
Mhm.
kind. All these things are multiple red flags in one that I would call bad communication. But that's one I've ignored mostly when I was younger. Now I'm too old to give a shit if someone can't do those things. I'm like, okay,
People still name call?
I have witnessed it. I have witnessed it.
All right. So do you think that people are scared of commitment now?
Tough question because I think I want to say like deep down that's what we all want in whatever form that looks like for us. I do think it can be scary because we've been burned before. Like we know what's on the other side of, committing to someone and it not working out, but we also know what's on the other side if it does work out. Like a commitment can go one of two ways. It lasts or it doesn't. I would say in the gay community, I feel like I hear more often than not that people do want commitment. I don't hear often that people are scared of it though. So I would have to say maybe not, but I do know that the fear exists for a variety of reasons. But I would say yeah, I'm drawing a blank on whether I've had that conversation with people because I think again, like we're all looking for a relationship. We all want it. If it is scary to people, I think most are willing to take the leap of faith and give it a shot. It's understandable if people are just again because like of past experience or the nerves of like, oh my gosh, like what am I getting into? Is this going to work out? But yeah,
I agree with you. I don't think people understand the amount of hard work commitment takes. So I think that's
Mm.
another factor in that. Just like anything, committed to the gym, mental health, fitness, I think commitment is harder work than people think it is.
Yeah, I think that's like the baseline of success. It's not like whether you're a match, it's whether you're willing to like choose, like to commit to it, or like true commitment, come back to the relationship, like really make it work. Like that's commitment. And it is the hard part. But I think if anything, it's like I could see the fear coming also from like, is this the right person? Kind of like we talked about earlier with dating apps, where it's like, is the grass greener or like, am I making the right decision for myself? Like, am I up for this? Because I think sometimes when you are in that position, it's like, is this a good decision that I'm making? There are other people I've met who are like more avoidant or,
Yeah.
they're scared to because they don't know or they don't have the emotional capacity to show up in a relationship and to be vulnerable. So when they do, it can end up, taking more of an emotional toll on them than they realize at first and then they retreat kind of thing. I think it just depends on who you are and what I think who you are probably shapes what might be scary about it for you. No doubt it's a big decision either way.
Yeah. And I think too, I don't think people have experienced what commitment is. Like they don't know what it looks like and it's foreign to them. So because of that, how do you know how to commit to anything if you've never have experienced it? So a couple more questions I have for you, but I'm always fascinated by this next question I'm about to ask. What is the biggest lesson heartbreak has taught you?
Ooh, I think the biggest lesson heartbreak has taught me is to value the experience. When you enter a relationship, it's a 50-50. It's either going to work out or it's not. We all know that it's possible, but we take the chance anyway. And even relationships that don't work out in the long term are not failures. Like that can be very successful in what you gain from it on both ends. What you learn about yourself, the memories you make, like all of those things, because before heartbreak is love and romance usually. And that is such a valuable experience. Like that phrase, like better to have loved than and lost than never loved. Like it's very cliche, but when you are able to reach a place of gratitude for your exes and past relationships, you really understand what that means and how it feels. I think for me too, like, mid 30s, I'm single now, but I've had some really amazing relationships that I just wouldn't trade because I did get to experience partnership and love and care for myself and toward another person. And like that type of thing, I think is just, it's so valuable. Like breakups really taught me, like, you can't set your mind on an outcome. Life is going to change, things happen, but that journey along the way, again, it sounds just so cliche, but if you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, that the things you gain from it is just, I wouldn't trade those. So I think that's probably the most valuable lesson I've learned from breakups is like there's something to be gained in it all, and it's all valuable experience.
I agree. I think it's hard for people to see that when they're in the eye of the storm, but
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I always tell people, I know right now it's hard. You are not thinking about the lesson you're learning. You're thinking about, I want them back. Why did they do this? You're so emotional during the breakup. So like, obviously you stated that with a very clear mind, and it's hard sometimes to
Yeah.
get to where you're
was
at.
I was not this put together in the moment learning lessons. I was spiraling out in a crazy way. But that's the thing about it is you have to understand like after any pain comes beauty. Like you have to just sit with it. You have to experience that pain. You have no choice. Like you have to address it. And once you go through it, it does get better. The hard part about it is you don't know when and what it's going to take, but it will. I'm speaking from like, these things happened to me a long time ago.
People always ask me, how did you get through it? I'm like, you just have to go through it.
I totally agree. It's like you have to let yourself feel the feelings. You can't avoid it, acknowledge it, and keep your life moving.
I agree. So I have one last question. We talked about loneliness. What advice would you give someone who is struggling with loneliness as a queer man?
Okay. If you're a queer man or person and struggling with loneliness, I think there are a few things that you can do that I would do when I have felt lonely. So, speaking from just what worked for me, number one is turn to gratitude. So, in the time when I felt loneliness in life is when I leaned hardest into gratitude and started different practices where, like, in the morning when I would wake up and walk my dogs, I would spend the whole time listing out what I'm grateful for. And then at the end of every night, even to this day, every single night, after I turn off my lights, I lay down, like I list as many things as I can find gratitude for in my life. Like, and it's a non negotiable every day. That takes time to really get beneficial, but like truly counting your blessings can make a huge difference in turning your outlook and the shape of it to just finding what you're thankful for, lightens it up a little bit in terms of just life is in general. I think from there too, though, is there was something else I was going to add. I also kind of started to take care of myself, learning how to take care of myself. We all have inner children. We are all still the child version of ourselves inside. Like we may be adults, but it is up to us to take care of ourselves as if we are a child. And for that reason, I would always list out like, okay, like what is one thing that I could do today that would just like feel good? Is it just going and getting a coffee? Or is it like an extra lap around my neighborhood with my dogs or something? What is it? And then do it, commit to yourself. I think those two things are very like foundational. And then like the third that I would say is like find your community, like don't isolate. I think sometimes you need time to yourself to feel your feelings and process and all of that. But really, when it comes down to it, like humans, like we are social beings, we are herd animals, just like any other flock of animals you'd see. Like we really are that. And that's why community, why friendships and relationships are so valuable to us. And so I would pick, even just one person and like reach out to them and just meet up with them. Like it's surprising. I know when I felt like super lonely, I almost had to drag myself out of my apartment where I'm just like, I don't even want to do this. By the end of whatever it was that I did with a friend, I felt better. Like it's just pushing through that. You have to be relentless about it. Like these are only things that you can overcome. Anything external, probably not going to fix it. But if you can turn to gratitude, do things for yourself that you know are going to make you happy, even something small, and then turn to at least one friend, like that's what I would say is like really important, especially when you're gay or queer, like looking into the community for that can be really helpful. But above all, like it doesn't matter who you are or who you reach out to, just finding someone to lean on is really impactful.
Where can people find you on social media? I know you have two platforms, but can you let my audience know?
Yeah. So one is just my name. It's at Japheth Franco on TikTok. And then the other is a girl and a gay on TikTok. So I'm on Instagram, Japheth underscore Franco. I don't really talk about dating there, but if you want to see that stuff too, that's there. But like TikTok is where I'm at. So yeah. And I love connecting with people just like you, like it brought us together.
And before we go, I really want to just say that I really enjoy what you're doing. As a queer Latino myself, I think it's great to see other people pushing forward, supporting. I will say not everyone is as supportive as someone like yourself. It's such a beautiful thing to see. And I love your content, as you know this. Thank you for being on the podcast and for just shining your light, because you do have a lot of light.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's really kind. And I mean, I have to thank you in return. Like, it's always so heartening to meet other people who have good energy and who are building community. And especially at intersections like being Latino, being queer, there aren't many of us sometimes, or we're not as visible. So when we find each other and connect, it's really so meaningful. I mean, it's all nothing but thanks. I'm thrilled to have been on here and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Japheth, for being on.